I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary.
We're not talking about creeping fascism here. This is full-on police state tyranny from the gangster president Donald Trump.
California Senator Alex Padilla was tackled and handcuffed following his attempt at asking a question at a Department of Homeland Security press conference. And a Canadian MP, or former Canadian MP Charlie Angus, is calling out Trump's fascism. So I'm going to get to both of these stories in this video. I prepped the Charlie Angus story first, and then this broke, and this kind of feeds in right in line with what Charlie Angus is warning about Donald Trump. But this is just wild. California Senator Alex Padilla handcuffed at Noem, Kristi Noem news conference. So image of it here. Let me get to the actual video, though.
Guys, ready? And bell. Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your hands off.
How many of our ICE agents have been docked?
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let my hands go, I put behind my back.
All right. Cool. One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Okay. So he has since been released. I'm going to get to what he said in a press conference. First, the reaction to this has been clear and universal. So it's shocked senators. Some of them are calling it fascism. I've seen important note here, a reaction to this that Democrats should be having, as they are all stunned by it. But it's unfortunate that it takes one of their own for this to happen to, for them to speak up as loudly and forcefully as they now are. It shouldn't have to take. I'm going to get to some stories later on concerning the Charlie Angus portion of this, of just how fascist things have gotten in America. It shouldn't take one of their own getting tackled for them to recognize this. But it's important regardless. If this is what it takes, then whatever. We're moving in the right direction in terms of the reaction to what is happening. But Homeland Security writing here, this is their reaction to it. Senator Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live press conference without identifying himself for having his Senate security pin on as he lunged towards Secretary Noem. Ah, yes. Lunged towards Secretary Noem, who is not even in the picture, is nowhere near him. But yeah, lunged towards her. That's what a Democratic senator was going to do. He was going to attack Kristi Noem? Is that the claim here? It's so absurd. Mr. Padilla was told repeatedly to back away and did not comply with officers' repeated commands. The Secret Service thought he was an attacker, and officers acted appropriately. It is so much bullshit. Really? They didn't recognize the senator of the state that they are in? Please, it's so stupid. And speaking of the political theater, Kristi Noem is political theater personified. Here is Majority Report tweeting out these images of the clownery of Noem. But this gets to Padilla's response following his release.
Over the course of recent weeks, several of my colleagues, have been asking the Department of Homeland Security for more information and more answers on their increasingly extreme immigration enforcement actions. And we've gotten little to no information in response to our inquiries. I was there peacefully. At one point, I had a question. And so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I was not arrested. I was not detained. I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, If this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country. We will hold this administration accountable.
And that's the ultimate point there. If they are willing to do this to a sitting U.S. senator, who aren't they willing to do this to? And as I'll get to in a bit, we've seen many examples of that. So I want to share here Charlie Angus. So he is no longer an NDP MP. He decided not to run, essentially retire, I guess, from Parliament. But he is still has been one of the clearer voices around how dangerous Donald Trump is, and he recently held a press conference, and I think it was pretty good, so I want to share a clip of that here.
I am here in the press gallery of the Parliament of Canada, the heart of our democratic engagement with people. And this morning I offer my deep concern, solidarity, and prayers with the people of California who are out in the streets unarmed, defending the rule of law against illegal kidnapping and deportation, and they're being faced down by the military might of the United States Marines. We're not talking about creeping fascism here. This is full-on police state tyranny from the gangster president Donald Trump. And this is the man who will soon be crossing our border to attend the G7 meetings in Canada. I have received hundreds of messages of concern and outrage from Canadians that a convicted felon, sexual predator, and a man who has threatened our nation's sovereignty is being allowed into our country. I understand the Prime Minister Carney's reluctance to escalate the situation with the MAGA president. But we have to stop kidding ourselves, and we have to be very honest about what we are being asked to engage with. Donald Trump poses a clear threat to American democracy, to Canadian sovereignty, and to the international rule of law.
Charlie Angus really has been one of the clearer voices internationally, calling out what Donald Trump has been doing, and it's good to see him come out and speak up in solidarity with the protesters in California and speak out against the disturbing rise in what ICE has been doing, the terrorizing it has been doing to U.S. residents, including a few examples here. So, South Bay father and son deported to Honduras after showing up to immigration appointment. So some of the more smooth-brained morons out there are saying, well, if you don't want to be picked up, don't want to be targeted by ICE, just follow the law. They went to their immigration appointment and were deported. Did they look like a threat to you? The vast majority, I believe there was a breakdown of this. Less than 1% of the people being deported actually have a criminal record. So we're talking the vast majority of people being picked up and removed from their homes are completely innocent. They're just being snatched up because they weren't born in the U.S. And many of them, by the way, have visas, are here legally, are trying to attend their immigration appointments, and they're still being sent out because there is a quota that they're being told to meet. So I want to play for you just a quick a clip from one of the news reports about this story.
Now, in a small town, the 9-year-old is trying to get used to his new reality. He says,
I was scared to come here. I wanted to stay with my brother.
Martir's brother Kevin is still in the U.S., though.
He's grown now, but Kevin was with me my whole life. I want to see my friends again. I miss all my friends.
In case you're wondering why there have been protests, why people are speaking out against Donald Trump and the administration, it's because stories like this are incredibly common. People are standing up for their communities against authoritarianism. Looking up this story, I came across another one because, again, these are every day. New ones are popping up. This from ABC 5. Father deported to Guatemala after attending routine immigration hearing. So a Guatemalan man who has been in Oklahoma City for 14 years, now separated from his family after showing up at a routine immigration hearing with his 3-year-old son. I mean, this is to target immigration hearings as a way to get people out, to meet a quota. You have to be just the absolute sludge of society. How do you wake up in the morning? No wonder all these clowns wear masks when they're grabbing these people off the streets. They probably wear masks looking in the mirror, because how could you possibly face yourself knowing this is what you do for a living? Absolutely disgusting. Another example of how serious it's become. Plainclothes DHS agents lied to LA school officials to question elementary students.
What interest should a Homeland Security agent have in a first grader? They conveyed to both principals that the parents or the legal guardians in charge of these children had provided them authorization for access to these kids in school. That is absolutely, blatantly untrue.
These agents asked specific questions about students ranging from 1st to 6th grade. The superintendent says they arrived in unmarked vehicles and wore casual clothing.
When the principals attempted to write down details about their IDs, they quickly hid their IDs.
All parents from these schools were notified about these incidents.
The details of this story really give you an indication of how aware these people are of what they are doing is wrong. For these agents to all of a sudden get skittish when it comes to writing down the details of who they are, showing up in plain clothes, lying to the principal about getting permission from the parents. This is a terrifying level of authoritarianism. And one of the more surprising aspects about the story is that this is 2 months old. For whatever reason, it's getting a lot of traction this week. But, there's been a lot of news, a lot of examples of Trump's authoritarianism. It likely just got lost in the shuffle. But it goes to show that how normalized this is becoming for some people. And I think it's important to understand how serious this is, which is why it's good to get a perspective from someone like Charlie Angus, who, a Canadian MP, giving a outsider perspective on how serious things are. So one last clip from Charlie Angus here. This is an interview he did the day after his press conference.
But, ultimately, the G7 is an economic gathering of democratic countries. The United States is the world's largest economy. It is also right now a democracy. Why wouldn't Donald Trump be in Kananaskis?
The United States is no longer a democracy. This is an authoritarian regime. I think there's an incredible naivety about dealing with Donald Trump. And I'm not blaming anyone for it, but we're dealing with in completely uncharted territory. Donald Trump has made clear again and again that he doesn't believe in the international rule of law. I'm not saying that Prime Minister Carney is going to block Donald Trump at the border. I think that would escalate things dramatically. But we need to start talking much more clearly about the threat to democracy that is happening in the United States, because it's a threat to Canada and it's a threat to the world at this point. When I talk to university professors in Canada who are told by their administrations they have to bring burner phones if they're going to cross the border, I mean, that's what happens when you go to North Korea. When we see people being arbitrarily detained and kidnapped, this is a country now outside of the rule of law. What's very concerning for Canada is that we live along the border. We live along the border with a country that we've never had to worry about, but now we have to worry.